Good evening, and thank you for coming. My name is Denise McKelvey, and I will be the moderator for this evening's candidate debate. The Citizens Clean Election Commission is the sponsor for this evening's event. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign finance reform measure initiated by Arizona citizens and passed by voters in 1998. Participation as a clean elections candidate is strictly voluntary. The system provides full funding for qualified candidates who agree to abide by the Clean Elections Act and rules. To qualify for funding, participating candidates must illustrate the support of their constituents by gathering $5 qualifying contributions from registered voters in their legislative district. The candidates agree to adhere to contribution and spending limits and may not accept money from special interest groups. They also agree to participate in these debates. As we move into the debate, we encourage audience questions. If you have questions, please print them clearly on the card given to you when you walked in the door and just hold it up. One of our volunteers will pick up the cards and deliver them to me. We screen the questions for clarity to eliminate duplication, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. If you need another card, just raise your hand. There's an independent timer who will see that all candidates have equal time to answer questions and will tell them when their time is up. Our format this evening will be opening statements, 2 minutes each, a quick lightning round, 2 minutes each to answer audience questions, then 2 minutes to answer candidate questions. Then we'll have closing statements, 2 minutes each. We ask that you remain polite to all the candidates and give them a fair and uninterrupted hearing, no matter how strongly you may agree or disagree with anything being said. This means no applause, outbursts, or cheers, except for now as we introduce the candidates. Ms. Irene Littleton, a clean elections candidate running for the State Senate, Republican. Mr. Harold Van Gilder, a clean elections candidate running for the State Senate, Republican. Mr. Wayne Bachman, clean elections candidate running for a seat in the House, Republican. And Ms. Darla DeWald, clean elections candidate running for a seat in the House, Republican. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name, starting with the Senate, and will progress from that starting point. The closing order will be determined by reverse alphabetical order by last name. Ms. Littleton, will you start the opening statements, please?
Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. As you know, my name is Irene Littleton, and I'm running for State Senate in Legislative District 8. I am a conservative candidate. I am pro-life, pro-family, pro-states' rights, pro-Second Amendment, and pro-small business. I am not in favor of Medicaid expansion or Common Core. I feel that they are bad for the city, for the county, and for the state. I am a lifelong Republican, and that was a challenge being brought up in Massachusetts. When I was in high school, I started a Young Republicans Club. That was another challenge. The third and last challenge was when I supported Barry Goldwater for president when I was in high school. Massachusetts is definitely not the place for Republicans, but we tried. I've lived in Pinell County for 7 years. My husband and I moved here, actually from Alabama, and we've been living in Casa Grande. I am a PC, a state committee person, very involved in all the politics that has gone on in Pinell County since I first moved here. I was the first vice chair of the Pinell County Republican Committee. I was chairman of the Pachyderms and chairman of the Arizona Conservative Coalition. I'm very proud to be sitting here, and I look forward to your votes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Van Gilder.
Thank you all again for being here. I'd echo Irene's welcome to you. My name is Harold Van Gilder. My wife and I came here from Oklahoma in 1976, the bicentennial year. So we've been here 38 years. We've been in Pinal County 13. I guess we'll stay. I'm a retired federal Department of Defense employee. My wife is a retired public educator. We're very proud of our son, Clark. He lives in Maricopa, and he's your physics professor out at CAC. He and his wife, Gia, has produced the two most beautiful granddaughters that the planet's ever seen. We have pictorial evidence and completely biased field reports to back those up in case you'd like to read them later. I, too, grew up in Missouri, born in Missouri, when my family was the known Republicans in that town, so I know what it's like to be the Republican kid. At Morley Elementary School, I got in fights for being the Republican guy, the Republican kid. So that was my background from the Republican cradle to now. I consider myself a traditional platform Republican. I've never been anything else but a Republican. I've never belonged to any organization that did not have the name Republican in it. That's just me. I have no other credentials to bring to you, political-wise, except for that. I am a Republican. That's all I'll ever be. That's all I ever want to be. And I'm going to ask for your vote when you go to the polls. Fill out your early ballots or go to the ballot box in August. Thank you. My name's Harold Van Gilder, www.haroldvangilder.com, and I want your vote when you vote.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and again, thanks for attending this debate this evening. I'd also like to thank the Clean Elections for hosting this. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for all you folks to get out and meet some of the candidates. Again, my name is Wayne Bachman. I am hopefully your choice for the House of Representatives in LD8. I decided many, many years ago, actually when I was in high school, that someday I wanted to hold public office. For me, it only made sense to do it when I was a bit older. I've always studied the Constitution. I've always studied how government works. I've met and sort of hung with a lot of politicians, almost all of them Republicans. I have studied some Democrats and some independents, because you have to know the opposition. Personally, I've always been a Republican. I've never been anything else. I've voted straight Republican tickets in my entire life. I've never been anything other than a Republican. This year, it's extremely important that you carefully vote. You need to carefully vote for conservative Republicans. We've had too much in our legislature of people claiming they're Republicans and then voting Democrat when they have the opportunity. And I don't believe, ladies and gentlemen, that's what you put people in office for. I believe you put people in office to vote what's on your conscience, the way you want this government run, the way you want the state of Arizona run. And I'll appreciate your vote, and in return, I'll promise that's what I'll do. I will represent all of the Republican people and their wishes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. DeWald.
First of all, again, I would like to reiterate what's been said and appreciate all of you being here tonight. I think the Clean Elections has been a great process being a part of the Clean Elections and very transparent group, and I really appreciate that. My background is that I did not grow up a Republican. I grew up in a Democrat family. The last president I recall my parents voting for, that was a Democrat, was Jimmy Carter, and I thought it was the biggest mistake ever. I was in junior high school at the time. The first president I ever got to vote for was Ronald Reagan in his second term, and I consider him today to still be one of the greatest heroes of our day and time. And I wish we could find another Ronnie Reagan to run again. I have never wanted to be a politician, and I still don't want that title over me. What I want to be is an advocate for you, the voter. I want to be an advocate for the Constitution. I am a person who believes strictly in constitutional rule of law. I believe that our Constitution has value today, along with all 27 amendments, and I believe that our state constitution has great value. Unfortunately, many of our people that are running our country in our state legislatures and in our Congress do not seem to care a whole lot about our constitutions any longer. I am a grassroots constitutional conservative Republican. I believe in the tenets of the Republican Party, and unfortunately, most of the people that I see in our parties today don't seem to care a whole lot about the tenets of the parties that they belong to. So that's very important to me. But what's most important to me is that I am a person of my word, that I represent you in a way that I said I would, that I will always be truthful and honest with you in everything that I do, and that I will always be transparent. That is my way of thinking, and that's what I plan to do for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the lightning round. In an attempt to lighten the mood for tonight's debate, we're going to do a quick lightning round of this or that. This will allow us to get to know the candidates a little better. Candidates, please just answer with one word. Ms. Littleton, CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC?
Fox News.
Mr. Van Gilder, CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC?
Fox Business News.
Mr. Bachman, CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC?
Fox News.
Ms. DeWalt, CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC?
Fox News.
Thank you. Ms. Littleton, Lumberjack, Sun Devil, or Wildcat?
Wildcats.
Mr. Van Gilder,
Wildcats.
Mr. Bachman,
Wildcats.
Ms. DeWalt?
Wildcats.
Thank you. We will now move into our debate questions. Ms. Littleton will start our first question. The first question is, what is the most serious challenge facing Arizona today?
I think that ultimately the most serious challenge facing Arizona today is education. And the reason why I pick education is because in any state, education affects the economic growth of any state in the union. Arizona right now is going through some trying times financially, and we need to improve our education in order to have more businesses come here and open more businesses here. We need to look at our economy and how we're going to make it better, how we're going to grow it, what we're going to do about the fact that both Medicaid expansion and Common Core are going to cost us dearly. And then considering the fact that the court has ordered the state to pay $314 million to the education department for a cost of living increase. So we have some real challenges going on, and we need to work together in both the Senate and the House and get these resolved. Work on them, change them, repeal them, do what we need to do to help Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Van Gilder.
Jobs, jobs, jobs. Quality of life begins with a job. Better education begins with jobs. Quality of life doesn't begin with the Clean Air Act or any other thing having to do with state government. This state is begging for jobs, particularly Pinal County, the Santan area. We have people that are underemployed, not employed at all. I have single moms at my church that are holding down 2 and 3 jobs just to make sure their kids can go to the doctor, and they don't go without. We need jobs. That's going to require a little bit of reform on our part, primarily having to do with state and corporate income tax and capital gains tax. Those things need to be fixed in order to make Arizona more attractive to jobs. When I was in Sierra Vista for 23 years, I founded the Sierra Vista Economic Development Foundation. Over that time, since 1986 or 7, that organization has brought over 5,000 jobs to the Sierra Vista, Fort Huachuca area. I know how to bring jobs to an area because I've done it. I don't have to be OJT'd on the things that you need to do in the public-private sector to bring jobs to an area. But again, it's jobs, jobs, jobs. Jobs floats all boats. It floats upgrades to education, it uplifts health care, availability, and sustainability, all those issues. Jobs are the key.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman.
I believe it's a much bigger picture. It's not one particular item, it's a much bigger picture. And that bigger picture is liberalism and non-conservatism. If you have a conservative government, a government that understands its place, that they understand that it's to serve the constituents, then you will have people getting their fingers out of education. You'll have them getting their fingers out of health care. The government doesn't belong, the federal government doesn't belong in education. That's a state thing, and our state needs to take over education and get rid of this ridiculous Common Core thing. The state needs to get out of health care. In the Constitution, nowhere in the federal or the state Constitution does it say that we are supposed to, as a government, fund health care. These are private things. If you put people back in charge of themselves and their small businesses, you'll have all the jobs you need. Government doesn't need to come and run everything. Government has its rights and its responsibilities. It doesn't need to overstep and get into our lives on a daily basis, preventing us from seeking the happinesses we want. If you're a business owner, you deserve to have your business run the way you want it to run. You don't need a federal agency telling you how much you need to pay out for health care. You don't need your children taught in a way that you don't even understand. My kids, exchange students, came home tonight. My wife and I couldn't help them with their homework. It's hitting home, ladies and gentlemen, and it's liberalism that's doing it to you. Conservative. Please vote conservative.
Thank you. Ms. DeWald.
I believe that education is the foundation for all other things that exist within our state and in our country. Without a good, solid education, we don't have the jobs, we don't have the entrepreneurs, we don't have the business growth, we don't have anything. So it's fine to say we need jobs, and I agree that we need jobs. But when you have 78% of high school graduates are not graduating with their peers, they're graduating late if they graduate at all, and you have the majority of these kids that are going off to college who need remedial reading and writing to even take a 101 class in college today, we have a major problem with our educational system. Our children today are not educated to go out and work in trades. They're not educated to go out and go to college. Many of them don't even have the ability to hold a conversation with other people. So we have a major problem with our educational system. Common Core is part of that. Federalized programs are part of that. This has been something that's been going on for a long time. I completely disagree with any federal programs being brought into our state. We're giving up our state rights every time we take those dollars. What we need is a group of individuals from our state, top educators, parents, grandparents, educators who have been retired, who understand the old ways as well as people that understand the new ways, coming together and creating a system that works for our kids where they're at. When you have standards that are up here and our children are down here, what is it going to take for them to reach up to there? We need a system that works in our state, for our culture, for our diversity, that reaches down where these children are and helps them to move up to the next level. Once they have that foundation in place, those children can excel. The jobs will come, the workforce will come, and we'll have a much solid, better state.
Thank you. Our next question on immigration, we'll start with Mr. Van Gilder. What role does the state have when it comes to immigration and protection of the border?
I believe the state ought to be able to, within the limits of its capacity, to enforce all the federal laws that implement our state. There are some realities that we have to be aware of, though. I know one of the governor's candidates wants to put the National Guard on the border. There's two potential problems with that. Number one, we'll run out of money real quick if the government lets us do that. Number two, the president can federalize them and send them back home. So we have to be, but we have to be able, I think, as a state, to enforce the laws, all of them, that apply to us. You know, if we arrest a criminal, ICE should not be able to let them go. You know, if ICE lets somebody go, they need to be compelled to tell our county sheriffs and our police chiefs, a criminal is now amongst you. We need to be able to have that capacity. But the states have a role in securing the freedoms and the safety of their citizens. I want my wife, when she goes to the store, to be able to have a confidence that she'd get back to me. She might not want to get back to me, but she ought to have that confidence that she could get back to me. You know, if my kids go out to play, or my grandkids now go out to play, I ought to have a confidence that they're not going to be gunned down by a drive-by shooter. We ought to be able to do all of those things that impact us within the borders of Arizona as it relates to federal and state laws. And we need somebody that will make those demands. And I think that I'm the one, at least one of the people that can do that. Thank you. Once again, I'm Harold Van Gilder, www.haroldvangilder.com, and I want your vote when you go to the polls.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman.
Texas is experimenting with sending their guards to the border. Personally, I think we ought to experiment the same thing. If our president wants to nationalize them, send them home, that's fine. It's going to be expensive. Somebody else got us into this mess, but I think it's time that the state of Arizona pulls themselves up by the bootstraps, goes to the border, and defends our border. If the federal government's not going to do it, then we have to do it. We're going to spend the money one way or the other. If we don't spend the money on our guard troops, then we're going to spend it in health care and education and everything else for these illegal aliens. That's just the way it is. The money's going to be spent one way or the other. It's just up to y'all to decide where it's going to go. As far as the rights of the government to federalize them, I can't see our president doing that, the Guard, federalize the Guard and send them back home. I can't see our president doing that. He hasn't showed enough courage to really take on any issue. I don't think he'd take on an individual state like that. I don't think he'd do it. Mr. Van Gelder's right. We have rights. We have the right to expect safety. In fact, it's the job of our government, state and federal, to protect its citizens. If the federal government isn't going to protect us from illegal aliens coming into our state, then our state needs to buck up and just do it ourselves.
Thank you. Ms. DeWald.
Well, first of all, again, we're a nation of laws. I don't think we have any issue with the number of laws on the books regarding enforcing our immigration and securing our borders. I think what we have is a failure of people to actually follow through and make sure that is done. We have a weak presidency right now. We have a weak government that is, and maybe it's not weakness, maybe it's planned, but either way, it's affecting these states, and it's affecting border states, and it's actually something that affects all the states eventually because there's a trickle effect. Right now we have people coming in, young people coming in that are being delivered by busloads to practically every state in the union. These people are going to disappear. These young people are going to disappear. But right now, they're our responsibility, and we're going to have to pay for them. I think one of the biggest things we need to do is we need a governor who is willing to stand up to the federal government and say, this is our state, these are our rights. If you're not going to do your job, Arizona is going to do the job for you. And if it takes putting National Guard on the border, then we do that. Yes, is it costly? Absolutely. But it's also costly $2.4 billion a year to take care of the illegal aliens. Plus, with all the new people coming in, that number's going to go up. Now with the Medicaid expansion, Obamacare's Medicaid expansion, we're also paying for them in healthcare. We're going to actually give them insurance. So the costs are going to continue to rise. We have to do what makes sense for Arizona. We need to protect our borders. We need to put the National Guard in there. We need to put our sheriffs out there on the state lines and stop these buses from coming into our state. SB 1070 gives us that right. The teeth that are in that bill are still in that bill that was upheld by the Supreme Court. We need to use the laws that exist, and we need somebody with the moxie in there to do that. I'm just the kind of person that's going to stand up and make sure that those kinds of things happen to the best of my ability for you.
Thank you. Mr. Pease, the question is, what role does the state have when it comes to immigration and protection of the border? What role does the state have when it comes to immigration and protection of the border?
Well, since the federal government doesn't want to protect our borders, I don't see that we have any other choice but to continue to send our National Guard and do what we've done in the human sector. We very efficiently secured the human sector by a presence of our National Guard just by showing up. And we did it with off-the-shelf technology. And I'm all for doing it again in the Tucson sector in order to stem the tide of drain on our economy from what's coming across the border. Yes, we do have a role, inasmuch as the federal government has refused to do what they're supposed to do.
Thank you. Ms. Littleton.
A country can't be a country unless it has borders. And our border is just wide open. And it's open for a reason. It's open because this administration wants it that way. The more confusion in the United States, the better. If you're talking about the economy in Arizona and not sending the National Guard down there, I kind of agree, it's going to cost us. But we pay $2.8 billion a year to educate, medicate, and incarcerate illegals that are in this country. Wouldn't that be nice to have that back in our budget for our schools, maybe to eliminate state payroll taxes? So many things we could do with it. We need the private sector, and we need the National Guard. And the state of Arizona, the Senate, the legislature needs to get together and figure out how we can do this in order to protect our state and our people. I thought I lived in a safe area until one of the sheriff's deputies was shot 2 blocks away from my house. This is terrible. I know people who sit and watch TV with a gun in their lap in the area they live, which is Silver Bells. This is a terrible situation for all of us. How we're going to resolve it is something we're going to have to work on ourselves. We can't wait for the federal government, and besides, they don't want us there. But this is our state. This is our land. So we need to do what it takes to stop this insanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. We'll start with Mr. Bachman. There's a concern about the misuse of RICO funds in Pinal County. Who do you think is accountable for this, and what would you do to address it?
Well, I believe the accountability lies with the sheriff and the state attorney or county attorney. I've seen the results of some of the spending of RICO funds. Some people claim they're illegal, the way the money is spent. Some people claim it isn't. My personal experience with the spending of RICO funds, what I've seen is that money is donated to schools, for example, to host parties for seniors, graduates, to have a senior party it's a lock-in. It's generally done in a gymnasium at a school or something. I've heard that different sources say, well, you can't spend it on that. I don't know the laws regarding RICO. I'm not sure if it's legal or not. However, I do want to say that I think if you're spending money, ill-gotten gains from from cartels and gangs, if you're spending it in a way that promotes safety with children, I don't see anything wrong with that. Again, I have to admit, I'm not exactly 100% up on where all the money goes, but if you're gonna spend it to help keep kids safe on party night instead of letting them roam the streets, then I don't know that I've got a big problem with it.
Thank you. Ms. Daywald.
Yes. I feel a lot like the way that Wayne does on this, and that, you know, with any kind of funds that are out there, like the RICO funds, that we do need accountability and we need transparency. And I think that's something that I'm not always seeing. Now, that doesn't mean that I have my eyes on every single thing that's going on throughout our county and our state, but some of the way the monies are being spent at times seems somewhat questionable to me. I think there's other ways we could spend those monies that would be put to a lot better use. And I'd like to see that occur instead of it being like a bonus to make somebody possibly look good for, you know, spending that money, which is the way it appears to me sometimes. It's just another picture opportunity. I'd like to see it actually be something that maybe more people have a little bit of a opportunity to be a part of deciding where those monies go and not be decided by, say, just a sheriff or a sheriff's department. I think it should be something that is decided on by a group of people, maybe a panel or a task force that look for the best place to put those funds. So I would like to see that happen. And again, the county attorney, you know, he's part of the process also. I think that it's important for all of these things to be very transparent. And I don't know about you, but that's something I think is a big problem in our government today, is just a major lack of transparency and accountability when it comes to our funds and how they're being appropriated. And I'd like to make sure that those are being done the correct way, being handled the correct way.
Thank you. Mr. Pease?
With regard to RICO funds, first of all, there are two sources. One source is federal, one source is state. The federal RICO funds have suggested guidelines as to how they are to be used. The state has no guidelines. The use of RICO funds is strictly up to the sheriff and the county attorney. They have used the RICO funds extremely judiciously in promoting youth programs throughout the county, as well as using a good proportion of them for training and for equipment for the department. This is where the RICO funds go. There has been no misuse of RICO funds. They have been used totally legally, excuse me. And I would like to continue to see them used the way that they are.
Thank you. Ms. Littleton?
To the best of my knowledge, we have no accounting of RICO funds. You know, from what I see, our sheriff gets the majority of the RICO funds, but is there any accounting of where they go? They've done a lot of good with those funds in Pinell County with boys clubs and girls clubs and schools, and there's even been a couple of vehicles that they have used in the sheriff's department. A lot of good things go on with RICO funds, but still, as a resident of Pinell County, my first question is, if they do, why do they all go to the sheriff? Do they go to any other county? Or are they only given to the people who find the ability to get the RICO by arresting or finding all these drugs or whatever they do? I'd like to have an accounting on it. I think that from what I've seen, it's been spent well. but that's only from what I've seen. And I'd like to ask any of the other folks here if they've seen any more, if they've seen any accounting. Do you think we need accounting? That's a good chunk of change. And our children need it. Where it's going to the kids, I think it's wonderful. But I'm just kind of in the dark. How much RICO has there been? And where has it all gone? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Van Gilder.
Yes, you know, there's a couple of things we need to understand, I think, about any expenditure by government. It really doesn't have much to do with whether the funds are used for things that make us feel warm and fuzzy or not. The real issue is, do the rules allow it? Do the rules allow it? If the rules allow it, there is no issue. If the rules don't allow it, why is it being done? Again, you know, I don't know that there's anything wrong with what is going on. I mean, who doesn't want to help our kids? But if the RICO funds are not accounted for, and that's the thing that drives me crazy as a former city councilman, I couldn't wait to get in front of Chamber of Commerce and tell them my accountability numbers. I did this, I did that, I got this and I got that done. You know, and I don't see that taking place. I think that would go a long way to alleviating all of the questions and concerns about RICO funds. Again, it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not they're being used for good purposes. Yep. The issue is, do the rules allow it? If the rules allow it, brag about it and show it. If the rules don't allow it, somebody needs to fix it. Somebody needs to stop it. Okay. RICO funds, I'm glad they got the law there. I think we ought to take everything that we can away from bad guys and put it to another public use. But again, if it's allowed, there is no issue. If it's not allowed, there's a big issue. We need some accountability and explanation as to the use of these funds.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to candidate questions. Starting with the Senate, Mr. Van Gilder will ask Ms. Littleton the first question.
Pease, he came in finally.
Oh, Mr. Pease. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alan, here is the question. If you become an elected official, what do you consider to be the most important? Your personal morality and worldview, or your oath of office?
That's a good one. I think they go hand in hand. I think they're synergistic. Oath of office is to do the will of the constituents, represent them fairly, listen to what they have to say, decide on good conservative principles, along with the fact that my worldview is that the world's going to hell in a handbasket. One of the reasons that our states are in the mess that they are is because we do not have any leadership to speak of on the federal level, which is deteriorating our position in the world. And I think where we have an opportunity at the state level is to start standing up for states' rights and imposing some of the basic fundamentals that this country was founded on, imposing them on the federal government. Have a very strong position on upholding oath of office, very much in line with my worldview.
Thank you. The next question will be from Mr. Pease to Ms. Littleton.
Oh, boy. We're good friends. Ms. Littleton, what is your understanding of Common Core?
Oh, my overall understanding of Common Core right now is it is a national standard by which the country will run its public and other schools, so that everybody across, all the students across the country will learn the same thing at the same time. So if And the military thinks this is great because of all the moves that the military folks make. So if you go from New York to Arizona, your student in the second grade is going to be studying the same thing the students in the second grade in Arizona are studying. Now, this is just across our country, but understand they want to make this a world view. I think it's very bad for everybody involved.
Thank you.
Now my question. Okay, Mr. Van Gilder, how can you say you support the Republican platform when you support Medicaid expansion, which is part of Obamacare?
But for one thing, I reject the assertion that it's part of Obamacare. It's part of Access, a 30-year-old program in this state. In September of last year, Congressman Paul Gosar, when he spoke to the Santan Republican Club, said that if Arizona had not taken that money, that every rural hospital in Arizona would have closed its doors or cut back its services. Now, hopefully, Congressman Gosar knows what he's talking about, and he's not some liberal flake that's leading us off of the cliff. We got 3 rural hospitals in LD8. Casa Grande, one in Anthem at Florence, and one in Globe. I'm going to leave it to other people to shut them down or to cut back their services. I'm not going to have your family hold its breath if your hospital is impacted to see if you make it to Phoenix on the helicopter or not. I want you to be able to go to your hospital and get the need that you require at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I just reject the assertion as part of Obamacare. It's part of a state program. We have 3 years now to fix it, and I don't see anybody moving to come up with a model of delivery that's sustainable, affordable, and makes health care available under Access. That's what we need to be doing. Instead, we're suing the governor in court. We're Republicans, and we're asking the court to make laws to overturn a vote of the legislature. I don't get that. That's escaping me. But again, I just reject the assertion that Access expansion is Obamacare. I just reject it.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the candidate questions for the House. Ms. Daywald, will you please ask your question to Mr. Bachman?
Wayne, can you elaborate on the position of Paul Gosar on Obamacare's Medicaid expansion and the cost to Arizona taxpayers?
Well, thank you, Darla. For some time now, I've been hearing this story about Congressman Gosar making the comment about hospitals closing or maybe not offering as many services. When the legislature voted to fund Obamacare, to fund Medicaid expansion, or if you will, Access, which is another word for welfare, when they voted to fund that, what they did was supplement hospitals. Now, ladies and gentlemen, hospitals are big business. We have this idea, or if you will, around a hospital is an aura of some type of sainthood or something. And it's just not that way anymore. Hospitals are big business. When the federal government bailed out General Motors, probably nobody in this room was in big favor of that, especially the way it was done. When the federal government bailed out the banks because they were too big to fail, nobody in this room was probably hugely in favor of that. But yet we'll sit here and listen to somebody tell us that these hospitals had to be bailed out because for some reason they're on a different level. Ladies and gentlemen, it's big business. These are publicly funded corporations that run hospitals. And if one hospital fails, trust me, there's 30 more standing in the wings to buy up what's left of it and run it. Now, anytime a business that can't perform in its present economy, anytime they take a subsidy from the government, what you're doing is taking tax dollars out of your pocket and supporting them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a little contract business. And on your way out, would you please dump $100,000 in my bucket so I can continue to run my business? Does that make sense? No. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final candidate question, Ms. Daywald, or Mr. Bachman, will you please ask Ms. Daywald?
I'd love to, thank you. Darla, Would you explain to me or us the problems we face as a result of the 3 a.m. vote to expand Medicaid or to expand Medicaid?
Well, first of all, let me back up and say that the Obamacare Medicaid expansion is absolutely Obamacare. If you go to the ACA, which is the Affordable Care Act.gov, I believe they're the highest office right there in regard to the bill, they call it Obamacare's Medicaid expansion. They don't call it access, they don't call it Medicaid, they call it Obamacare's Medicaid expansion. When this went to the Supreme Court, one of the questions was, did the government have the right to force states to take on Obamacare in the states? They said they did not. So one of the things they did, and if you go to the bill of Obamacare, Mr. Van Gelder, on that page, 143, it says Obamacare Medicaid expansion. It's Obamacare's Medicaid expansion that allowed them to expand to childless adults and people at the 133% poverty level. Now, we do have access, which now falls under the new guidelines for Obamacare, just like all other insurance today falls under those same guidelines. Everything is measured by Obamacare standards today. But the Obamacare itself, the Obamacare Medicaid expansion, is made up of two components that are Obamacare. That is the Affordable Care Act, and that is the Patient Protection Reconciliation Act that make up Obamacare's Medicaid expansion. The federal government says it, it's in the bill. What they passed in our state is absolutely that. What it's done to our state is it's going to cost us billions of dollars, and I want to know who's going to pay that. They raised a tax. This is why it's going to the Supreme Court. They raised a tax without a 2/3 majority which is required, a supermajority, when they passed it in the middle of the night. That is breaking the law. They broke our law, and they passed this bill, even though Arizona voters said in 2010, when we voted to amend our Constitution, no Obamacare in our state. Our state legislature failed us. They voted for it anyway. It is Obamacare.
Thank you. We will now move into our closing statements. The first closing statement will be given by Ms. Daywald.
We obviously have a lot of issues in our state. We have a lot of wonderful qualities about our state. I love Arizona. I chose Arizona as a place to live. I was not born here, but I chose it. I grew up in the Midwest. Kansas City, Missouri, by the way, is where I was born, Mr. Van Gelder, so we both were born in Missouri. I also lived in Kentucky, I lived in Tennessee, and I lived in Southern California. But back in 1992, I decided to move to Arizona. My parents had relocated here. They owned 2 businesses up on Route 66 in Holbrook, Arizona. I've helped my parents there. I worked in rural healthcare. I myself have a background as a healthcare administrator, so I pretty much understand the healthcare model, what's wrong with it, where it needs to go. And I actually have proposed some great ideas, and they're on my website, darladaywald.com, www.darladaywald.com. If you go under issues and under medical, you're going to see an entire page of absolutely great ideas that I have pulled together, some from other states, some from other people, and some of my own ideas from what I've seen are very serious issues within our state. I think that we have an opportunity as legislators to make some very positive differences in our state. One of those is to work on jobs, to work on education, to pay attention to our children and the method in which we're teaching them to bring them up in a way that they have a better chance for life than what we had. Unfortunately, today, with the Common Core and the things that are going on, we are dumbing down our kids. We're not helping them. We are ruining our entire medical model. We've invited the federal government in areas they do not belong. We have broken our own state constitution by allowing federal funds into our state through Obamacare and through the federal education. Nowhere in the enumerated powers of the Constitution does it say that the federal government shall provide those services. Those are states' issues, states' rights. Our citizens should be a part of that process, and that's what I hope to do for you. So please, a vote for Darla Daywald is a vote for your voice.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman.
Well, again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out tonight. It's a hot trip, I know, so anytime you leave your house, you're giving up a little bit of comfort, and I appreciate you showing up to listen to us. Also, again, I want to thank the Clean Elections for hosting this. This has been outstanding. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to make another voting decision. The incumbents that I'd like to see unseated are T.J. Shope and Frank Pratt. It is my belief that they have not voted with your best interest in mind. It is my belief that they voted with the best interest of their campaign contributions in mind. And I think if you go on the SOS site and look at where their contributions came from, T.J. Shope has 4 people in his district donated money. All the rest of it's out of his district, out of state, large corporations. Guess what? Hospital PACs, things like that. They're the ones. Technology PAC. Frank Pratt has 2 people in his area that donated money. All the rest of his money comes from out of state or out of area. And he's raised a fortune. Both of these gentlemen have raised a fortune by voting. They did not vote to represent you. They voted representing their checkbook. I don't know how else you can explain it. I voted for these gentlemen. I proudly stood in a voting booth and voted for both of them. And I will not forgive them today for stealing my vote. They stole my God-given right to vote, and they stole yours if you're a conservative Republican. Now, I have nothing against the gentleman personally. It is strictly political, what I'm talking about, strictly politics. If you're satisfied with the way they voted, vote for them. If you want true change and real representation, Wayne Bachman. I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Van Gilder.
Hey, thank you all for coming, and thank you guys for putting this on. In January of 2013, the Republican Party essentially swept every county office. We hold every seat here except the treasurer's office and 1 supervisory seat. The chairman of the Board of Supervisors in 2013, Steve Miller, told all the electeds to sharpen their pencils because we were going to have $7 million less in 2013 than we had in 2012. And most of them did pretty good, but there were a couple that came in with $20 million in new spending requests. That would have made us $27 million in deficit spending, and Pinal County can't do deficit spending. In March of last year, I started going to the Board of Supervisors meeting. It was way before I filed for office, and started telling the supervisors, don't give them the money. We're Republicans. We promised we'd make government small, keep it efficient. And you know, folks, I was the only Republican. None of my seatmates up here were there with me. There were 2 guys that were with me that just stunned me. One was a guy named Roberto Reveles, who used to work for the ACLU. And he told the supervisors, don't give them money. The other one was a guy named Henry Wade, the chairman of the county Democrat Party. He told the supervisors, make them live within their means. Ladies and gentlemen, you got a choice. You can send somebody up there that's not afraid to stand against powerful interests to guard yours, or you can send somebody up there that turns their eye when the good old boys do what they want to do and nothing is said. My name's Harold Van Gilder, www.haroldvangilder.com. I want your vote when you go to the polls.
Thank you. Ms. Littleton.
You forgot to say that, Wayne. What's your website?
www.haroldvangilder.
Thank you.
www.bachman4ld8.com. Thank you.
Ms. Littleton.
Well, this has been quite an evening, and I appreciate everybody that came here and all the questions, and I very much appreciate Clean Elections for helping me with my campaign. We have a lot of issues. We've gone over them here. I spent a lot of time at the supervisors also. We went every other week with a group for excellence in government, and we had your taxes lowered. Your taxes were lowered that year that we went there. And one other gentleman who is running for office in LD8 by the name of Vince Leach was one of the leaders in working with the supervisors to get the budget lowered so the taxes could be lowered. So I also have bucked the supervisors and went there constantly. I think we have a lot to do in this county, in this LD, and in the state. Because don't forget, even though we are representatives of Legislative District 8, we have to vote in all the bills for the entire state. We have to look at everything that goes on for the entire state. So we have to have a really broad view of Arizona and what's going on. But mostly we need to know what the people in Legislative District 8 need and want. There are some heavy-duty questions in this legislative district. Resolution Copper. Should Santan be incorporated? The mine in Florence. All of those things, I believe the people in those areas need to vote on, not us. We need to get the federal government out of our lives, not making new laws. It's IreneLittleton.com. Go there, you'll have fun. Thank you very much again. Alan?
Thank you. Mr. Pease.
Again, thank you very much for all coming. Thank Clean Elections for putting this on. I'm going into this as a person very much interested in basically 3 areas. 1, border security. 2, education. 3, economic development. I see them as synergistic and interacting one with the other. We need economic development to fund the education. We need border security to lessen the drain on our treasury. So all 3 areas are where I would concentrate. From a very conservative point of view, I have been a conservative, I think, since I was 6 years old. I can remember asking the question then, when certain issues came up, who's going to pay for this? And that is a question that I've been asking all of my life. If you'd like to know more, go to alanpeaseforsenate.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And to our candidates, thank you very much for participating in this forum. And to you, thank you very much for coming tonight. We all thank you for coming and informing yourselves before voting. We encourage you to find out more about clean elections and the candidates running for office by visiting www.azcleanelections.gov. A video of this debate, as well as other clean elections debates, will be posted on that site within 72 hours of a scheduled debate. Thank you all for coming tonight. Have a safe trip home.